In 1995, a young boy found a fossil along the shore of Egmont Bay. The fossil made the news. The boy became famous. What he pulled from the rock in red earth lived on Prince Edward Island roughly 300 million years ago. Herpetonix arsenaltorum, named after the boy who found it. This little beast got a lot of people talking. Did dinosaurs really once live in this little province? Could there be more fossils like this waiting to be found? Had anyone ever found anything like this on PEI before, and, if so, where could you go to see it? Dinosaurs are long gone now, but we clearly love them. They pop up everywhere, even where you'd least expect them. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World. This 1925 film brought dinosaurs back to life for movie audiences. Long before Jurassic Park, it showed what living, breathing dinosaurs might have looked like, and what they might do to our cities if one ever got loose. The film became a massive hit. Decades later, dinosaurs can still fill a theater, raking in millions of dollars for Hollywood. Museums bring us closer to the real thing. Even this small collection can bring in huge crowds. Dinosaurs went extinct over 65 million years ago. They ruled the Earth nearly 180 million years before that. Can we do as well? One wonders. Dinosaurs can't really come back, but if you know where to look, you can find prehistoric life all around you today. Dragonflies the size of seagulls filled the skies long before the first birds came along. Descendants of ancient plants now cover the forest floor. Sharks and their relatives started out over 400 million years ago. Jellyfish have been around even longer, although lots of us wish they'd go away. Snakes shared the earth with Tyrannosaurus rex, looking much as they do now. As for the mighty T-Rex, some scientists say there's more than a little of him in the modern chicken. Of course, people don't talk about prehistoric life when they talk about PEI. They talk about Anne of Green Gables and her house in Cavendish. They come to play a round of golf, to take in our island scenery, check out our seaside towns and see our many, many lighthouses. I can certainly tell you about lighthouses. I grew up near a famous one. As a kid, I spent a lot of time at Peggy's Cove, wondering, wishing, dreaming about the future and the distant past. I also spent a lot of time at the Nova Scotia Museum of Natural History, where I learned just how old this world of ours really is. I also lived in fear that the giant whale statue in the marine room would one day fall on my head. Or maybe one of the turtles. Nova Scotia is proud of its fossils and makes them easy to visit. Some are even roadside attractions. Pull over along the highway near Stewiacke, and you can have lunch with Marvin the Mastodon. Visit the cliffs at Joggins, and you'll find fossils scattered all over the beach, ready to be studied and shared by anyone who finds them. It's hard to imagine PEI having anything to compare to a place like this. In time, I trained to be a photographer and journalist, and left Nova Scotia for PEI. I thought I'd left the world of fossils behind me in my home province. But an old issue of the Island magazine showed me differently. Back in 1845, a farmer in New London found a piece of Dimetrodon skull around 290 million years old. Scientists sent it to the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. It's been there ever since. But a plaster cast made from the original remained. The Dimetrodon's an old friend of mine. I knew him from the dinosaur books my mom read to me as a kid. I never dreamed one would show up on PEI. I wanted to learn more. A friend helped me get in to see the field where the farmer found the fossil. It looked just like any other field, pretty, green, but no sign of anything special. I needed more. I needed to see the replica. The UPEI biology department has a room full of fossils. This place is a gold mine. The replica skull is there, of course. 3 of them, in fact. What really took my breath away are the cases and drawers full of fossils, dozens of them in all sizes, all labeled, all carefully stored, many from PEI, and many from the writer of the magazine article, geologist John DeGrace.
Well, I wrote the article in my own time because at that time I had just started as the registrar at the University of Prince Edward Island. So that was my evening and weekend work. I only retained one fossil that I have here, and that was one I collected myself. All the rest of them, most were donated, and I always felt that I was the custodian of the collection and not the owner of the collection. So that's why when I left for British Columbia, virtually the entire collection stayed behind. You always will find a lot of things in Prince Edward Island. Remember, the coastline is eroding at an average of a meter a year. So that means that you can walk along those shores every spring and see fossils that were not there the year before. The most prolific area was on the west side of Point Prim, and there were all kinds of plant stems and trunks there. That's also, Point Prim is the area where a lot of the trackways were found later on, although I didn't find any personally.
Point Prim, on the southeastern shore of PEI. It's famous for its lighthouse. You'd never guess fossils could be found here, but they have. We'll come back to them later. Just down the shore at China Point, Dr. John Calder told me more about the world that these fossils came from.
Almost 300 million years ago, the shoreline at Earnscliffe, China Point, would have looked much, much different than today. In fact, if you had been transported back in time, I dare say you wouldn't recognize it. The trees would be different, the sun would be in a different position, straight overhead, would be sitting right on the equator. There'd be no grasses. The ocean would be far, far away from us. We'd be in a dry land setting, trees that were quite different from today, cycads, tropical vegetation, Walkian conifers, and the creatures would have been entirely different as well. There'd be no birds singing. If you did encounter a creature, it would be something that you might want to run from. And we were not an island at that time. We were part of the center of a giant landmass. And what is now across the Northumberland Strait at Brule, Nova Scotia, was a few miles across that, if you want to call it a dry wasteland. And so it was really part of the same ecosystem, the same landscape. And that is today, of course, where we find fossils, footprints of the creatures whose bones have been found on Prince Edward Island. And it's not surprising because it was all part of the same landscape.
I visited Brule, Nova Scotia. There in the Tatamagouche Heritage Centre is the world of the Permian period in miniature. Could Erpatonyx arsenaltorum have left these footprints behind? How about the PEI Dimetrodon? He seems a likely suspect. Certainly the most famous one. The PEI Dimetrodon shows up on stamps, even coins, usually under his original name, Bathognathus borealis.
Bathognathus, or Dimetrodon, is clearly the most famous of PEI's fossils. But if there's a potential usurper to the throne, that would be Erpatonyx arsenaltorum, which was found in Egmont Bay. It's an exquisite fossil, and it also is the first of its kind that was ever found in the world. So here you have 2 major finds of ancient reptiles that were the first of their kind in the world. And you know, it's quite remarkable, and most people don't realize that here on PEI, on this little island, we have such an important fossil record.
2 important fossils, and much more besides. Erpatonyx arsenaltorum, Bathognathus, or Dimetrodon borealis. But what else has PEI got up its sleeves? All the books in the world, or in the public library, wouldn't answer my questions. Are people still finding fossils, and what have they found? Will we ever get a museum to share them in? How can we make it happen so that the scattered bits of prehistoric PEI can find a home? Digging deeper into the story behind our homegrown Dimetrodon might yield some answers. So back I went to the Permian period, 290 million years ago, back to the age of the first islander.